So where do policies come from? This was the key question proposed by Levin in the article you read for this week. Now, fundamentally, all policies start as an idea. Take, for example, the automobile. That was just an idea, but it doesn't mean it was a good idea. Unfortunately, some of the ideas that drive policy are fundamentally bad. This idea of the automobile was arguably one of the top 5 worst ideas in human history. Imagine it. You strap yourself into a 1-ton cage of steel, propelled by a combustion engine with highly flammable fuel, sparking and arcing electronics, seated on a plastic foam pad with maybe, if you're lucky, some carpeting underneath you, all of which is completely flammable, and it can melt in minutes of being ignited. The engine is basically a toxic waste site with battery acid, antifreeze, and even windshield washer fluid being completely toxic and harmful to you as a human. So because this idea of the automobile actually caught on, we now just go ahead and hurl ourselves through time and space in a highly flammable and toxic environment, and it uses a combustion engine to ignite its propulsion, which means we're basically driving a bomb. We travel in these incendiary devices at high rates of speed in very close proximity to each other and just trust that we're going to be able to operate the vehicle well. Amazingly, we also, for some bizarre reason, park them very, very close to each other and underneath buildings, these incendiary devices. Now, perhaps even more bizarre, as Larry showed you last quarter, we're now having this great idea that we should go ahead and automate cars and have driverless vehicles. So this is similar to what you read about in Stone's article regarding unguided versus purposeful actions and intended versus unintended consequences. My question is, do public servants actually use public policies to rein in bad ideas rather than just fix or eliminate the bad ideas that started? That's really why I'm talking about this in a policy lecture. Number one, why do we continue in government to make policies that mask bad ideas? Some of what we've accepted as part of our human existence might just need to go away entirely. The other reason I'm talking about it is it's almost immeasurable how many public policies have come about due to the invention, the idea of the automobile. Of course, my use of the word bad is a value judgment. How you approach policies will reveal your values, your epistemologies, and the paradigms or theories you've bought into. So, for example, I'm going to take you on a little trip. As a public administrator, I wanted to know absolutely everything about how policies were made, implemented, and analyzed. Here, let me hold you a little bit better. I wanted to understand our policies inside and out. I wanted to know what we did, why we did it, when we did it, how we evaluated it, what our criteria was. For me, it wasn't enough to just hear all of this secondhand. I had to understand and really grapple with what we were doing as public administrators. I'm going to sit you down just for a second. We're now on the roof. And the reason why is because this is my approach to public administration. I want to know absolutely everything about the policies that I'm responsible for implementing and evaluating. Why? Because my name's on it. Just like the ownership of this home. My name is on the title of this house. If my name's on it, I'm going to own it. And I recommend you do the same. As public servants, you should take responsibility and ownership for what you do. Now, as policy analysts, you need to recognize boundaries. And that's where the roof metaphor comes in. And I'm going to be using the house as a metaphor so that you can see what I mean by boundaries. When you're analyzing public policy, you need to know the limits of the scope of work of what you're doing. So this up here on the roof, it gives you an aerial view of the public policy. It's a metaphor for really being able to take everything in. However, we have to stay within our boundaries, otherwise we'll fall off the roof, and that wouldn't be good. Now, there's countless externalities impacting the efficiency and effectiveness of any given policy, but your analysis should focus on what policies set out to do, what it actually did, and what it's constrained by. Sure, it can be fun to spin off into the stratosphere and analyze all the things that a policy should have done or could do, but that would involve falling off the roof, and we don't want to do that. So stay focused within the boundaries of your policy whenever you evaluate it. So, if the roof is where we end our policy process with analysis and evaluation, then we need to go ahead and remember, how did we even get here? Go ahead and look back at the problem definition, more importantly, the problem identification. So if the roof was where we did the analysis and the evaluation, then under the house is where we're going to find our problems that we define and identify. So I'm going to take you on a little journey. Here we go again, right on down into the crawl space. I'm pretty sure it's free of rats and mice now, but let's go ahead and take a peek, because this is actually where your stakeholders in the policy process are going to be spending the majority of their time. And so you, as public servants, you need to understand what's down here. You need to be able to take time and identify the problems that are going to shape the policies that you end up crafting and developing. So here we are, underground in the crawl space. But we really don't want to stay here very long. And that is kind of the trick. In the public policy process, I think public administrators spend way too much time on either end of the spectrum. They spend too much time figuring out what is the policy, and it can be a lot of fun and it can be extremely important to get at the root causes of policies. But if you stay here too long, you could get stuck under the house, and you don't want to do that. You don't want to fall off the roof, and you don't want to stay under the house. So where do we go? We've covered analysis, we've covered problem identification and definition. Next thing is we need to make a decision and implement it. Let's head on into the main floor of the house. Now that's better. We got out from under the house, and now we're in the main level. We're in the kitchen, where, as we know, all families spend most of their time. Whenever you have people over, this is where your friends gather. Now, most people, of course, refer to this as the kitchen. I, however, refer to it as the room where we store the microwave, given that's what I use the most. That said, the main level of the home is really representative of where public servants spend the vast majority of their time in the public policy making process. This is where we're going to set the agenda. We're going to lay out all the different alternatives we have before us as far as what choices we can make in order to come to a decision and ultimately implement our public policy. And for those of you who are saying, you know what, this really isn't for me, I don't have anything to do with the public policy process, I'm not a decision maker, I guarantee you, every single one of you, if you're working in government, you are going to touch the public policy process at some stage of the process. Most likely it's going to be at the implementation stage. It's going to be on this main level in the kitchen, where the real cooking and doing gets done. But I guarantee you, you're going to touch it at some point. Basically, that is really the end of our time. I hope that you were able to visualize the different levels of the public policy process. And remember that when you're conducting your own analysis of your public policy, don't forget anyone's spot. Don't forget the roof, don't forget under the house, and don't forget the kitchen, but try not to get stuck in any one place. Keep things moving in a simultaneous fashion so that you can have each stage of the process in front of you at all times. This is going to help show you how all aspects of the policy are interconnected.